as the world raises a cry of starvation and malnutrition in Gaza. This follows the threat to recognize Palestine as a state in September by the European Union. Are these claims genuine? Do the video tells a lie? Are they also media propaganda, we may say? Or are they trying to declare Israel as a state of genocide? Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has debunked the claims. But what is it after now? Now, taking your attention over to the BRICS nation and Trump's recent sweep in tariffs. What does President Trump think about their agenda? Well, to get the details, welcome to the Flash News. I am Tabitha Ako. Let's begin. United States Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday in an attempt to advance ceasefire negotiations with Hamas and also to address a deepening humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The visit comes amid international criticism over the worsening conditions in the enclave where famine is reportedly unfolding. Benjamin Netanyahu has made a statement debunking the claims of this starvation in Gaza. Let's take a listen.
Release all our hostages, eliminate and destroy Hamas's military and governance capabilities, because Gaza must have, as well as presented, as though we are applying a campaign of starvation in Gaza. What a bold-faced lie. What a bold-faced lie. There is no policy of starvation in Gaza, and there is no starvation in Gaza.
Benjamin Netanyahu, in his words, there is no starvation in Gaza. Now, Witkoff's trip signals renewed United States engagement in efforts to secure a comprehensive ceasefire, with the White House pushing for the release of all hostages, disarmament of Hamas, and broader aid access. He is expected to visit Gaza on Friday to assess food aid delivery routes as part of a final humanitarian action plan. Now, following the meeting, Israeli officials noted a shift in the United States-Israel understanding from a limited deal framework toward a broader plan encompassing disarmament and demilitarization of Hamas. Officials also indicated efforts would be made to scale up humanitarian assistance, although Israel's military campaign in Gaza would continue. The ceasefire talks, mediated by Qatar and Egypt, held in Doha, remained deadlocked. Core issues include the extent of Israeli military withdrawal and the conditions tied to hostage and prisoner exchanges. Israel recently responded to Hamas' latest amendment on the proposed 6-day ceasefire, but there has been no official comment from the group. Meanwhile, violence continues. Gaza health officials report at least 23 fatalities from Israeli strikes, including 12 people near the Netzarim corridor, where civilians had gathered for aid. The Israeli military said it used warning shots to disperse the crowds and claimed no casualties were observed. According to Gaza's health ministry, at least 156 people, most of them children, have died from starvation and malnutrition, many in recent weeks. Now, facing the mounting global condemnation over the humanitarian toll, Israel announced limited 10-hour daily pauses in some areas of Gaza to allow aid delivery. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs acknowledged increased food entry but warned it remained far from adequate. Civilians attempting to access supplies still face threats from both armed looters and military forces. Calls for Hamas to agree to a ceasefire and also to relinquish arms have intensified. Around 50 hostages remain in Hamas custody, with approximately 20 believed to be alive. Public pressure on Netanyahu's government is also mounting. Protests led by relatives of hostages were staged outside the Prime Minister's office and in Tel Aviv, urging an end to the war that has killed over 60,000 Palestinians since October 2023. Netanyahu has maintained that the war will continue until Hamas is defeated and stripped of power. His coalition includes far-right parties pushing for a reassertion of Israeli control in Gaza, a move widely opposed internationally. Let's take a listen.
Release all our hostages, eliminate and destroy Hamas's military and governance capabilities, because Gaza must have a different future for our sake, for everyone's sake. And no country will settle for less. We certainly will not.
Qatar and Egypt have aligned with a new declaration by France and Saudi Arabia calling for Hamas to step down and transfer governance of Gaza to the Palestinian Authority as part of a long-term two-state solution. Israel, however, on the other hand, has rejected Palestinian involvement in post-war Gaza. Hamas has also dismissed disarmament proposals, insisting that resistance will continue until an independent Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital is realized. And what are the tensions going on? We see that diplomatic tensions are further complicated by recent moves from European nations, France, Britain, and Canada, indicating potential recognition of a Palestinian state. Israel strongly opposes these moves, interpreting them as rewards for the deadly October 7 Hamas attack that killed 1,200 people and resulted in 251 hostages being taken. Now, let's take a listen. We see that Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has also recognized, he made a statement recognizing the Palestinian state, which will be taking place in September. Now, let's take a listen.
Earlier this week, the Minister of Foreign Affairs represented Canada at the UN high-level conference on a two-state solution in New York. In recent days, I've spoken with our allies, including President Macron, Prime Minister Starmer, President von der Leyen. I've also had a number of discussions with our ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Ray. International cooperation is essential to securing lasting peace and stability in the Middle East, and Canada will do its best to help lead that effort. Canada has long been committed to a two-state solution, an independent, viable, and sovereign Palestinian state living side by side with the state of Israel in peace and security.
Away from Canada, taking you to the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has also made a statement that he would be recognizing Palestine as a state in September. Let's take a listen.
The UK will recognise the State of Palestine by the United Nations General Assembly in September, unless the Israeli government takes substantive steps to end the appalling situation in Gaza, agree to a ceasefire, and commit to a long-term sustainable peace.
Now, what about the United States? In a related shift, the United States imposed visa sanctions on officials from the Palestinian Liberation Organization, accusing them of obstructing peace efforts. The State Department declined to name those affected. We see the German Foreign Minister Johann van Poel, ahead of a state visit in Israel, emphasized that Palestinian statehood recognition should only follow the successful negotiation of a two-state framework. Meanwhile, Israeli ministers voiced renewed support for annexing parts of the West Bank, a stance likely to provoke further diplomatic friction. Now, taking you over still in the United States, with the sweeping tariffs of President Donald Trump. President Donald Trump, in a breaking news and a recent development, has signed an executive order introducing sweeping new tariffs on several of the United States' major trading partners, effective in 7 days. Now, the action, part of the administration's American First economic strategy, comes amid growing global financial uncertainty. The other raises tariffs on Canadian imports from 25% to 35%, excluding goods under the USMCA trade pact. However, goods exported through Canada could face levies as high as 40%. Additionally, the United States will also implement reciprocal tariff rates of up to 41% on unspecified countries. Also, talks with Mexico will be extended by 90 days, postponing a scheduled 30% tariff hike. Nonetheless, tariffs of up to 50% on Mexican steel, aluminum, and copper will remain in place. Now we see that the move has sparked concern among global manufacturers and businesses who fear rising costs, disrupted supply chains, and intensified trade disputes. Economists also warn that prolonged uncertainty could negatively impact global investment and economic growth. Now, that is that for Canada and Mexico. What about India? What is India doing? What are their reactions about this move? Now, India has pledged to protect its agriculture sector following the United States President Donald Trump's threat to impose a 25% tariff on Indian imports, an escalation that has rattled financial markets and drawn sharp criticism from the opposition. Let's take a listen.
So India was one of the highest in the world. They had won 175%, and higher than that. You know, there's another higher one is Canada. They've been charging our farmers 200%, 300%, 400% for years, and nobody did anything about it. But India is one of the highest. So we're going to say we're negotiating with India right now.
With no breakthrough in ongoing trade negotiations, the tariff is set to take effect Friday. Now, analysts warn it could disproportionately impact India, a key United States strategic partner in Asia, and also derail its ambition to become a global manufacturing hub. Now, the dispute centers around Washington's push for greater access to India's agricultural market, an area New Delhi has traditionally guarded due to its political sensitivity and the sector's significance, employing over 40% of the country's workforce. India's trade ministry reiterated its commitment to defending domestic farmers and small businesses. Parliament was also informed that protecting the agricultural sector remains a top priority in India. Meanwhile, the United States Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent noted growing frustration within the United States trade team, placing the burden of resolution on India. President Trump further criticized India's ties with Russia and its membership in BRICS, warning of additional penalties. Now let's take a listen. An interview with President Trump stating his concerns, or most probably giving his own predictions about the membership and then the connection India has with the BRIC nations. Let's take a listen.
Because BRICS was set up to hurt us. BRICS was set up to degenerate our dollar and take our dollar as the standard, take it off as the standard. And that's okay if they want to play that game, but I can play that game too. So if they're a member of BRICS, they're going to have to pay 10% tariff just for that one thing. And they won't be a member long. I thought BRICS was, you know, I said this about a year ago, and it largely broke up. But, you know, there are a couple that hang around, but I thought it largely broke up. BRICS is not, in my opinion, not a serious threat. But what they're trying to do is destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And we're not going to lose the standard at any time. If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard. You wouldn't have the dollar as you. And if we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war. We would not be the same country any longer. We're not going to let that happen. The dollar, you ever hear the expression, dollar is king? The dollar is king. We're going to keep it that way, okay?
President Trump believes the BRIC nations wants to challenge the dollar currency, but that may be, most probably come at a price. Now, could that be the reason for the sweeping tariffs to the BRICS nation? How is India reeling out of this? Indian markets responded with caution. The benchmark Nifty 50 and BSE Sensex indices dipped nearly 0.9% during early trade before recovering slightly to close about 0.4% lower. The rupee slid 0.2%, hitting a 5-month low against the United States dollar. Now, India's political opposition accused Prime Minister Narendra Modi's administration of diplomatic mismanagement, especially as other economies such as the EU, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, and Indonesia have secured comparatively lower tariffs in recent United States agreement. Now, the tariff dispute comes against the backdrop of a strained India-US relationship. Despite public camaraderie in the past, recent geopolitical tensions, especially Washington's overtures to Pakistan, have widened the gap. India has openly objected to Trump's renewed engagement with Islamabad, particularly after the short-lived May conflict between the two South Asian neighbors. Also adding to these tensions, the United States recently finalized a trade pact with Pakistan, which officials in Islamabad claim will reduce tariffs on their exports, though specific terms remain undisclosed. Now, what are the economic implications? Economists caution that the proposed 25% tariff could have up to 40 basis points of India's GDP growth in the fiscal year ending March 2026. Some experts are skeptical that further negotiations will produce a favorable deal for India, particularly compared to regional peers. Now, we see that in recent remarks, President Trump claimed credit for the India-Pakistan ceasefire announced on May 10th, asserting that it stemmed from his diplomatic intervention. But Indian officials, however, denied the claim and review the ceasefire as an independent development. But then let's take a listen. President Trump made a statement on that. Let's take a listen.
By the way, India-Pakistan was probably going to end up in a nuclear war if they kept, they shut down 5 planes in the last attack, and it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I called them and I said, listen, no more trade. If you do this, you're not going to be good. But they're both powerful nuclear nations, and that would have happened. And who knows where that would have ended up.
Well, the United States currently holds a $45.7 billion trade deficit with India, the world's 5th largest economy. A further deterioration in trade relations could most probably hinder broader bilateral cooperation across defense technology and regional security. Now, taking over to Africa, away from the tariff situations. Now in Africa, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo held the first meeting of their joint oversight committee on Thursday in Washington, marking a key step toward implementing a peace agreement signed in June. The oversight body, which includes participation from the African Union, Qatar, and the United States, was established to manage implementation and also to resolve disputes under the terms of the deal. The June Accord, brokered by the United States, calls for the withdrawal of Rwanda troops from eastern Congo within 90 days and the formation of a joint security coordination mechanism within 30 days. It also revives a 2024 agreement that outlines steps to verify and monitor troop withdrawal. Congo is expected to conclude military operations against the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, an armed group composed of remnants of Rwanda's former army and militias involved in the 1994 genocide within the same 3 months time frame. However, the 30-day deadline for establishing the Joint Security Coordination Mechanism has already passed, and both the Rwanda withdrawal and operations against the FDLR have yet to begin. Despite these delays, the Oversight Committee convened within the 45th day window stipulated in the agreement. We see that the United States officials maintain that the deal remains on track and that an announcement on the security mechanism is expected soon. Sources familiar with the negotiations acknowledged delays but said they were not yet significant enough to jeopardize the overall agreement. Meanwhile, military and diplomatic sources say both sides have continued to reinforce their positions with increased activity reported from the armed groups including M23 and local militias known as Wazalendo. Now, this is the latest from the deal brokered by the United States with Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. But then the coming days will definitely justify how positive this outcome would be. Now, this is where we'll be drawing the curtain on today's flash news. Stay tuned for Horizon. Do have a pleasant day and stay safe.